Hello and welcome to The Wire. I am Sumedha. I'm in conversation today with Vipin Veetil. Thank you, Vipin, for joining us and speaking with us today. He has been a former professor, assistant professor at IIT Madras. He's played such a crucial role in bringing to light the inherent systemic caste problem at the varsity. He has consistently through 2020 and for the past 2 years written to multiple agencies, even to the Prime Minister, and has brought this issue to the fore. Amid the process, he has faced enormous trauma. Also, he has alleged significant harassment which has come his way from the institution and from multiple people involved there. And today in this special conversation that we're having with him, we will be discussing the caste problem at IIT Madras and his personal journey alongside his case. So thank you, Vipin, for speaking with us. I understand that you come here at a time and you speak with us and share these personal details when you've gone through the last 2 years since you first filed your complaint, since you first wrote to the varsity about the caste problems, about the discrimination, about the slurs. And today what we want to know from you is to understand in a comprehensive view about what really happened and where does your case stand. I understand that you've also reached out to the National Commission for Backward Castes as well, the NCBC. We will be getting to that as well. But my first question to you is, where does the case stand right now? How have the last 2 years been for you? And if you can take our viewers through the kind of steps that you've taken. You've approached so many people, from union ministers to the Prime Minister himself. So where is the case? Where is your complaint right now?
At present, my complaint is with the National Commission for Backward Classes. I met them last week.
Yeah.
They have been kind enough to take it up again. Somewhat pleased about it. I don't know if pleased is a word which can at all be used in this context, but it's heartening to see that there is some sense of accountability within the system. The case really goes back to, it began with a minor incident, which is how these things typically begin. So what appears to be a minor incident is often a way to show you your place in that microcosm. And your place is often related to your caste or your gender or what language you speak, so on and so forth. And if you begin challenging that, if you begin not accepting the position of a second-class citizen, then slowly you realize that over a period of time, the whole administration begins to have a go at you. And that is essentially what has happened. The small incident in my case was, I joined IIT Madras without having any sense of social life at IIT Madras, without any sense of its caste reputation. And, I applied to teach a new course after I joined, which is a very ordinary thing to do. Everything is very ordinary so far. But you see, my course was not tabled in front of the committee, which looks at new courses and approves them, for long. And some individuals in the committee, and all of this is available, it's on record, it's on email, began to make comments about my merit. They said, one particular individual said that, he wants to teach new courses because he's not capable of teaching existing courses. This person also goes on to say that this is the time to judge his behavior. Now note, it's only been a month or so since I've joined. And no one in that group, and this is an official group, no one sort of challenges that. But anyways, they kind of stonewalled my attempt to get this new course. I asked the head of the department, who says, no one's allowed to teach a new course in their first year. All of this is sort of trivial. So I say, well, can you give this to me in writing? And nothing is given in writing. 6-7 months go by. A Brahmin faculty joins and applies to teach a new course. Immediately he's allowed to teach a new course. No questions about his merit. In fact, he's made a member of the committee which approves new courses. That is the power difference here. At that point I say, well, are the rules different for Brahmins? I explicitly ask this question. And when I ask this question, again, I'm threatened via email. Right? I have all of this in writing that, you've said, you've mentioned my name now. I don't know what the future holds for you. I have all of this explicit sort of email. Nothing happens, time goes by, I do register a complaint with the Dean Administration, no action is taken. And then finally, do understand that as all of this happens, you recognize your second class position in that society. Now you face one of two, either you accept that or you don't. And if you don't accept, then you've got to fight back. And when you fight back, you'll face consequences. And you'll realize that the people who've been sort of treating you as second class citizens, the reason why they're able to get away with it is they're backing from people who are in higher positions of power, right? So then finally in July of 2021, I filed a complaint with the National Backward Classes Commission. The commission asked IIT to conduct an inquiry. This I think was a fatal mistake. Because whenever someone files a complaint with whether it be the Women's Commission, Scheduled Caste Commission, Backward Classes Commission, Human Rights Commission, whatever it may be, it's probably because you've exhausted internal mechanisms, redressal mechanisms. It's not working for you, and also puts you in a vulnerable situation because now the administration can have a go at you.
Yeah.
So they did run an inquiry, but it was a very shoddy inquiry. One of the accused was sending out emails, scheduling appointments for their committee to interview. And I know of no civilized society in which an accused coordinates or helps conduct an inquiry.
Yeah.
Another accused was elevated to the Board of Governors while the inquiry was going on. Now understand that the Board of Governors makes decisions on promotions. So you're interviewing faculty members of the department to ask them, hey, look, is there a caste problem here? Do you know Vipin? Of the 3 or 4 people accused, have they said anything to you in particular? But now one of the accused is elevated to the Board of Governors. He or she will be involved in making decisions about promotion. How are they going to respond? You put them in a very strange situation, right? So at that point, I had to reach out to the press and inform them. Another thing IIT Madras does systematically, and perhaps also the other IITs, is that they systematically put out false statements to the press.
Yeah.
So when my inquiry was going on, they put out a statement saying that we deal with employee and student complaints promptly. Absolutely false. My complaint to the Dean Administration in January 2020 was not dealt with for a year and a half. And then again, when I told the Dean Administration in writing, when I said I would like to file a complaint with the Internal Grievance Committee, this is in July 2021, I got a phone call from him. And he said, if I do that, there may be negative consequences on me. In particular, if I leave to another institution, I may be haunted there. Because the people I'm filing complaints against are powerful people. They know people at the Ministry of Education. The other thing he said, another problem is that if you're trying to leave, you might never, they might create problems in giving you a relieving order. Then the next day I sent him an email again saying that, you spoke to me yesterday. No, note that this is said over the phone.
Yeah.
Never in writing. Right. They're very careful about what they put in writing, what they don't put in writing, and what they take from you in writing. Right, and what they don't take from you in writing. Next day, I wrote an email to him saying that you called me yesterday, you said this, I would still like to pursue a complaint. And only after that was my complaint pursued. So, this is a place where systematically you are kept away from the internal grievance redressal mechanisms. They put out another statement to the press saying new faculty are trained about internal grievance mechanisms. That's absolutely false. I was never trained about internal grievance. It took me 2.5 years to even know that there's such a thing as an internal complaints committee.
So when you did file the complaint, when it had come out, even then you mentioned instances at length where there has been more sort of harassment when this was out in the open. So if you can take us through that once a person who is an academic has come out, has filed a complaint, you didn't know if there was the presence of an internal mechanism, so you go out and you file a complaint. So what kind of a reaction was there to that complaint? Because you do mention that there was harassment after that.
Right. So the fact-finding committee, did look through my case. I asked them to record my testimony because I knew that they, this particular IIT has a habit of, taking testimonies and then at times not sort of being faithful in its reproduction. So I said, I want my testimony to be recorded, and there are 2 testimonies recorded, and I said, I'd like a copy. The first bit of sort of issue was they never gave me a copy of my testimony, and I kept asking for a month. I wrote to the then director of IIT Madras multiple emails, no response. I had to write to the Ministry of Education just to get them to respond to my request for a copy of my own testimony, which I, by the way, don't have even today. They've not given me a copy of my testimony. Then, they did this shoddy investigation at the end of which they concluded there is no caste discrimination for two reasons.
Yeah, and it came out in October 2021, and it said that there was absolutely nothing which was wrong. So, how do you respond to that? What did they say to you?
Right. So, they summarized the report by saying there is no caste discrimination on two grounds. The first of which is that I did not mention that I am from a backward caste community when I applied. So, I mentioned general. Now, note that my complaint is not that I got discriminated because I was general. There is no general. There is no general caste. There are particular castes. My complaint is that I'm not a Brahmin. It's a predominantly Brahmin institution. That's why I got discriminated. But more importantly, do recognize what they're saying from a legal point of view. Suppose if a person is to apply for a job at any of the IITs, the moment you mention general, what they're saying is that you waived off your right to register any complaints about caste discrimination. You've just signed off a document saying that I will
Never bring up caste.
never bring up caste because I've just said general, I cannot be discriminated against. You've waived off your legal rights. That's what they're saying. Okay. Now, so what are we supposed to do? We know that by writing general, we've increased our chance of finding a job. There are lots of studies which show that as soon as we mention our caste, our chances of finding a job decline. Right? So, should we preserve our right to complain about caste discrimination and at the same time accept a lower probability of finding a job? Right? Or should we give up our chance of complaining about caste and thereby increase our chances? This is a very strange place to put us in. So, that's one reason. The other, the second argument they make is that Vipin hardly interacted with the other faculty members, so it cannot be an issue of caste discrimination. Now, note my complaint was about differential administrative treatment, which is very difficult to explain.
Yeah.
Except, so there's one faculty as me, there's another person who's a Brahmin, same position, assistant professor, same kind of process is followed, but very different outcomes. And there are other Brahmin faculty before me who've taught new courses. Right? So it's an administrative thing. You don't have to interact with somebody. It's not a question of a slur which is, said about you. Right? It's not sort of a village where someone calls you by caste slur. That's not what the complaint is. So my interaction is irrelevant. But more importantly, how much you interact with people in a society is often a reflection of discrimination. It's not that low levels of interaction reflect absence of discrimination. I mean, think about how much caste Hindus, for instance, often do not befriend Dalits, do not eat with them, do not marry them. Very little interaction. Would we take that to mean that caste Hindus do not discriminate against Dalits? That's not. My own interaction was reasonably good in the beginning. It declined as the discrimination began because I myself felt uncomfortable interacting with people who were discriminating against me. So overall, the committee was certainly not equipped to carry out an investigation of this type. That's the most lenient sort of way to look at what the committee has done. There are, of course, less lenient ways of looking at it, but the most lenient way would be they're not equipped to carry out such an investigation.
Yeah. So my next question to you is that it was not just about your particular case. We've seen through the years, be it at IIT Madras, be it at other educational institutions, when it comes to the case of Rohit Vemula, when it comes to the case of Payal Tadvi, we've seen that there is systemic problems and inherent casteism in Indian academia, and it has to be confronted. One of the ways in which this has come to light is through your letters, is through your complaints, of course. But how do you view this at a departmental level, at the level of this, at a bigger level, if we were to take this to a broader conversation?
Look, I think the first thing to recognize is that there is no sort of it's not a question of merit on one side and reservations on the other side.
Yeah, that's the argument which we find all the time. Yeah,
it's not. Because recruitment in the IITs don't happen solely on the basis of merit. In India, there is always reservation. The question is reservation for whom? So the people who typically argue for reservation are really arguing for broadening the tent of reservation. So in IIT Madras, there is reservation for Brahmins. There's always been. It's not on paper, but it's far more effective than any reservation on paper. Right? It happens through social networks. Who do you invite for job talks? What kind of questions do you ask? Are you going to make an offer or not? Right. So the first thing, if students, Rohit, you mentioned Rohit Vemula, if students like him need to feel more comfortable, then we certainly need to have faculty which is more diverse.
Yeah.
And really, the way to get there is to make the system more meritorious. If you start recruiting people not on the basis of caste, but on the basis of merit, you'd see diversity coming about just naturally, right? But the people at the top are not willing to do that. So our only way to get that done is to actually enforce, reservations at all levels. Right? IIT Madras, for instance, every director of IIT Madras, except the second one, has been a Brahmin. Vast majority of them Tamil Brahmins.
Yeah.
I have an RTI pending for over 70 days now, where I've asked for the composition of caste composition of leadership at IIT Madras, the deans, heads of department. My own department, nearly all, if I'm not wrong, all heads of department have been Brahmins. Right? So if a student like Rohit comes in, or a faculty like I come in, our ability to sort of speak to people up above gets limited because they don't identify with our experiences, not at all. I myself have had notices written by the IIT Madras administration come and stuck at my house, right? And if I were to kill myself, it would just be a body bag for them. There'd be chaos. They'd ask the police to sort of come and block the areas. And that's where I feel we need to go a stage beyond the slogan that Ambedkar gave us. Ambedkar said, educate, organize, agitate. I think that era is now over. Now we need to educate, organize, capture. We need to capture positions of power. We can no longer be people who hold placards outside of IIT who are shouting. Then they would get the police to sort of beat us with lathis. We have to run away. We can no longer be people who are suffering outside the corridors of power. The stage of agitation is over. It's now the stage of capture. We must capture positions of power. And hopefully, when we do capture positions of power, we'll illustrate how it can be used instead of abused. It's not a question of getting back at communities who have done something to us, but really illustrating how you could have just rule.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you were mentioning to me, and we've understood this sort of composition at IIT, at other academic institutions as well, to be completely casteist. So when we look at research centers, when we look at departments, how do you view this kind of homogeneity as well in terms of opportunities also, the kind of opportunities as an academic also?
Well, let me begin with a small example. There's a research center at IIT Madras called the Bosch Center for Big Data. My work, in some sense, intersects with things that interest them. And after I joined IIT Madras, I began, conversing with the person who leads the place. I've asked him several times. We've had email exchange, academic kinds. And I was never invited to give a seminar, let alone be a part of the center, which is a far, far cry. Not even invited to give a seminar. So finally, after 2 years, I said, what is the process by which I can be a part of this center? This is very demeaning for an academic to do. Ideally, you would like to be invited to spaces. Nonetheless, I thought, it's been a long time, and I asked him. And he said, the way to be a part of the center is that you need to write a research proposal with somebody who's already in the center.
Okay.
Now, if you look at the Bosch Center's webpage, you would see there are about 2 or 3 dozen, 2 dozen odd faculty members, all of whom are men, except there are 2 women. Everyone else is a man, and vast majority of them are Brahmins. And even amongst the Brahmins, vast majority of Brahmins are Tamil Brahmins. Now I don't come from that community, so I don't have I won't interact with them on shared sense of music. We don't have a shared sense of food, culture. So the idea that we'd strike up a friendship and then write a research proposal together is not really there.
Yeah.
So if you want people from, so I asked him. I said, look, again, all these are in the email. I said, look, in the coming years in India, you'd see lots of people from very varying communities coming into the academia. So wouldn't it be more sensible to allow people who are not in the center to write proposals without necessarily saying that you have to know someone on the inside? No response. No response. Anytime you bring up the caste question, and irrespective of how reasonable your argument is, no response. Right? Now also note that the Bosch Center, and then Bosch Center at IIT is just an example, but they take money from an organization which is an equal opportunity employer.
Yeah.
They work in a country whose constitution does recognize issues of caste. The company itself is registered in a country which has a constitution that does not discriminate.
Yeah.
Now, in taking resources from all these 3 spaces and entities, you've created this island of discrimination, right? And we need to find ways to break that. It's not going to be easy, but we need to find ways to break it. Note that in this case, it's not even subtle. It's not even the situation where you apply and your applications are treated differently. You're not eligible to apply unless someone on the inside is willing to write with you. So it's sort of these research centers are sort of the sanctum sanctorums of Indian higher education, right? And again, I have a right to information question about the caste composition within these institutions, which has been pending for more than 70 days.
Yeah. And now to just bring me to the final sort of question, I mean, in terms of the way forward, in terms of your demands, how do you look at that? Like, what are your immediate demands and where in terms of the case, as well as how do you see this going forward?
So, my immediate demands are twofold. I would like my own case to be taken up by the NCBC, which the NCBC has sort of begun acting upon. I'd also like the four accused to be asked to step down from positions of power, particularly the two in IIT who are in positions of power. The head of department to step down till the investigation is completed. And if the investigation finds out that there is nothing wrong, that's perfectly fine. Not everything goes my way or anyone's way. But that's one demand. The other demand pertains to what has happened in the ongoing special recruitment drive. I've seen now this recruitment drive for SC, ST, OBC faculty members, and what I've seen on the inside is, at least in my department, the fields advertised have been very restrictive. Very narrow fields have been advertised, despite the fact that lots of us recommended broader areas. This is a way to limit the number of people who are eligible to apply. And this allows them to then say, we didn't find anyone who's suitable. And after a year, the area is then opened up to the general category. Right? So the notorious none found suitable, which is often used to keep people from marginalized communities out, in popular debate, you're told that, oh, look, we just didn't find enough meritorious candidates. But merit about what? You've advertised very, very niche, narrow areas where you're unlikely to find people.
Yeah.
This is manufactured.
Yes.
And who are the people who've decided this is the area to advertise? The Brahmins who've held these positions of power forever. Right? And when we, who were from more diverse group, we said, no, these are not the areas we want to advertise, we were not listened to. So now we have 6 faculty members from the institute who've complained about this. Formal complaints have been registered, and the complaints, I sent all those complaints to the Ministry of Education. So my second demand is the Ministry of Education or the Parliament set up a committee to look into this case. And I'm certain that this is not just IIT Madras.
All right. So on that note, I would like to end this conversation, but we at The Wire are committed to continuing coverage and following this case, as well as highlighting these aspects within academia and to bring up issues of caste discrimination to the fore. So I'm really grateful that you took out the time and that you spoke with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sumedha. Thank you for having me over.
Get a sneak peek of exclusive content before everyone else for channel members only. Memberships start at ₹89. Hit the join button below.